I see this problem all the time in our industry, private investigations. It's the 1099 problem. It's the idea that you don't have a private investigator's license, but it's okay because you're working for a law firm. They've hired you, you're doing work for them, but they're 1099ing you. In other words, they're treating you as a contractor. They're not actually treating you as an employee. And this can be a huge problem. Hi, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. I'm the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. Getting your private investigator's license from the state is ridiculously difficult. Not because of the testing requirement, it's the experience requirement that jams up most people. 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 hours of experience is required. Just an obnoxious, unnecessary thing in my view. Obviously, we have to protect the industry, protect the consumer, but these things are onerous, and they are largely, in my view, put into place by large existing private investigation agencies who are trying to keep the competition down. So people try to think of and figure out a workaround for this, and so they say, well, I'm working for a law firm, and in my state, investigators working for a law firm do not need a PI license. However, are you really working for them if you're only a contractor, if they're only 1099ing you? Okay, so here's the thing you got to look at. Look at your specific state law. They're going to have a couple of things there. Number one, they're going to define what is a private investigator. And the definition may be stunningly simple, like a private investigator is one who's engaged in the business of private investigations for hire. Okay, what does that look like? And then they'll have a list of what these types of services are, and it can be quite inclusive. They try to make it so there's no wiggle room around it, that if you're going to do this work for hire, that you need a license. Now, I will point out it's for hire. And I say it like this sometimes. It's like cutting hair. You can sit on the corner and cut hair for free all day long. But if you start charging money for it, you likely need a barber's license or cosmetology license, something like that from the state. Of course, this doesn't help a whole lot if this is what you love to do, this is what you want to do. You would do it for free almost, but let's face it, you got to make a living, right? My caution to you is this 1099, what you may think of as a loophole or you're super clever about it. This can be actually a misdemeanor in some states. In other words, if you're conducting investigations for a law firm, but you don't have a license and you think you're covered because their in-house investigators are exempt, that could be a real problem for you, for your law firm, for all the cases that they've handled. Keep in mind there are specific definitions of what an employee is. And if you're working for a company being 1099, you're not considered an employee. That means any kind of in-house exemption you might have in the state law will not apply to you in that circumstance. And again, go back to your state law, because there will also probably be a list of exceptions of who is not required to have a private investigator's license, even though they're doing kind of an investigative job. For example, people doing genealogical research for pay, they frequently in different state laws are not required to have a private investigator's license, even though they are really doing kind of investigations, right? So here are my cautions for you. Number one, understand your state's definition of private investigator. Don't do private investigator work that requires a license. If you don't have a license, you're going to get yourself jammed up. And then when you go to get your license, if there's any record of this, that could be a disqualifier. In my state, it is. If you've got a conviction for conducting investigations without a license, that disqualifies you from ever getting your license. There's no for 20 years or for 10 years. It's just a blanket disqualification. And understand the exemptions in your state law. If you're going to be doing private investigations work, many times in-house investigators are exempt from needing a private investigator's license. So for example, working for a bank, if you're in the fraud department, you can conduct investigations many times in many states, everywhere that I know of, without having to have a private investigator's license. If you're actually hired by a law firm, and I mean you work, if you're an employee of a law firm, you probably don't have to have a private investigator's license to be doing that investigative work. Now, keep in mind, there are strict definitions on what it means to be an employee. And so that means that W-2s, W-4s have been filled out. That means that the proper withholdings are being held by the law firm, that type of thing. Don't try to wiggle on this. You'll get yourself jammed up, you'll get your client jammed up, and it could cost the case, whoever you're working for. And again, the things we do sometimes have very large consequences, including child custody. And you can't be risking the welfare of the people around you because you think you've figured out an exception. Believe me, the states have spent decades and generations fine-tuning this to keep people from finding a workaround. Just keep the work that you're doing legal and ethical, within the bounds of the law, within the bounds of ethics, and you're going to do pretty good. It kind of comes back to what I share with you every week when I say do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.